every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Tonight we've got Housewives' favourite, he's back on the show, that's Matthew Larzer. And top pollster, Matt Goodwin, he's on the show for the first time. We've got an athletics legend coming on, Chris Akabusi, he'll make you laugh. We've also got the sister of Joey Essex, that's Frankie Essex, she's on the show for the first time. And he's back, Adam Brooks, the landlord, and I can confirm he is 5'10". But first, let's go to the news.
Good evening. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Tata Steel has confirmed up to 2,800 jobs will be affected by its plan to close furnaces at its Port Talbot. The cuts will be made over the next 18 months as the company transitions to a greener way of working. The Unite Union says it's ready to use everything in its armoury to protect staff and defend the industry. Meanwhile, Downing Street says the job losses are not a result of the Prime Minister's net zero target. Rishi Sunak saying he remains committed to British steelmaking.
The government provided £500 million to support Tata. The alternative, by the way, was that the entire plant would be closed and all 8,000 jobs would be lost. But the government worked with the company, provided £500 million. The company is investing more money in order to safeguard thousands of jobs. And that's something that the UK government has done. The Welsh government did not participate in that. And that's because we cared about those jobs and the future of steelmaking in Wales and the UK.
But Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says he's concerned about the future of the industry.
I was there just in October, so I know how this is going to impact on the workforce. The government said it had a plan for steel. It transpires the plan involves thousands of redundancies. There's a better plan, a multi-union plan, that the government needs to look at again. That's a viable way forward. It's vital that we have a viable steel industry in the United Kingdom. Labour's got a plan for that viable future, not just for the next year or two, but for decades to come.
Police say a newborn baby was less than an hour old when she was found in a shopping bag in East London. The child, who's been named Elsa, was discovered wrapped in a towel by a dog walker in Newham. Uninjured, she's said to be black or mixed race. Efforts are now being made to find the little girl's mother. Police say 4 people found dead at a house near Norwich are thought to have all been from the same family. The bodies of 2 young girls, a 45-year-old man and a 36-year-old woman, were discovered at a home in Cossey this morning. Norfolk Police says it's being treated as an isolated incident, but detectives are keeping an open mind. A missing schoolgirl has been found safe and well by police after being missing for 11 days. 16-year-old Julia Scala will now be reunited with her family. She had gone missing and was last seen leaving her home in Mitcham in southwest London on the 8th of January. And Prince Harry has withdrawn his libel case against the Mail on Sunday. The Duke of Sussex says instead he wants to focus on the safety of his family and his legal action against the Home Office. He was suing the Mail on Sunday over a story about his dispute with the government department and his security arrangements. He'll now have to pay Associated Newspapers' legal costs as well as his own. He's been ordered to pay almost £48,500 on account before the end of the year. Those are your top stories on GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now it's back to Lee Anderson's Real World.
Today, I'm joined by Professor Matt Goodwin. Thanks. First time on the show, Matthew.
Thanks, Lee.
And our resident left in the corner, Matthew Lawler's back on the show. I've got to be nice to him. My mother says I pick on him a little bit. That's not true, is it, Matthew?
I think,
That's enough.
Your mother's always right. Your mother's always right.
We're
mate.
going to get
Remember
straight to it, guys. Straight to it. He's chirping away again. Look, this week we've seen some heavy scenes in Parliament, lots of pylons, Matt, on Twitter, on politicians of all sides. And I'm thinking to myself, it's getting a little bit nasty, a little bit distasteful. Is social media the new pitchfork brigade? Is it affecting people's mental health, the recipients, and the people who's actually, dishing it out?
I think it is. I think this week's reminded me a bit of those Brexit days, just as Parliament was trying to get the votes through. I think because an issue like immigration is so emotive, because as we saw in a report this week, 90% of all seats in the country want to see immigration reduced. Lots of people really care about it. I think they feel strongly that Parliament isn't really representing them on that issue. And the fact is, and I'm sure you know this, most MPs on both the right and the left lean further to the left than the average voter on issues like migration. So many people are watching on social media thinking, actually, I'm not sure these MPs are really representing me. They're not really representing my voice.
So is the social media stuff, is that people's frustration or is it going too far?
I don't think personally it's going too far. I think it's just a new form of communication. I'm worried, to be honest, about the effects on mental health, by the way. If you look at the evidence in the US, a lot of people now, serious psychologists are saying, let's get smartphones out of schools because they're doing damage to kids. But when it comes to politics, of course, it's polarised. Politics has always been polarised. 1980s, people will remember Thatcher and how polarising that was. But I think social media has allowed people to have a direct route into people like you, into the MPs, and I think that's made it quite combative.
Matthew?
Well, I think social media is a problem in that it's taking a real toll on our politics. I think that one of the things that nobody ever talks about, of course, is it's a relatively small number of people who dominate, who make a lot of hot air on social media, and they, in a sense, crowd out the views of other people. I think the danger is that their voice is that he who shouts loudest gets heard the most. That's always been the case.
But they don't necessarily win, though, do they, Matthew?
No, they don't. But I think they do sometimes change the terms of the debate. And I also think, MPs of all parties, it's a really, it has a real effect on. I actually think that we should do an experiment. Let's get a couple of MPs to come off social media and see if when the election comes, if their results are any different to those who spend their lives tweeting and then dealing with responses.
See, I don't like to be controversial on social media, but you can guarantee if I get up in the middle of the night and I go to the toilet, say, I'll make a cup of tea, and I happen to tweet, and I shouldn't, or put a post out, you can guarantee within 20 seconds, literally, it's the same trolls are straight back at you.
Yeah.
What's all that about?
You've got to mute them. You've got to block them. You've got to get someone to go through your social media, clean them up. You know what's interesting? I was looking at some of the research on social media, and it's quite interesting. Matthew's right. There are certain people that dominate Twitter. Often, they tend to be people on the radical left who tend to dominate Twitter, kind of progressives.
Lunatics.
And the evidence shows they are the most likely of all to block people whose views they disagree with. So a lot of the liberals who say they're liberal, often within these debates are actually quite illiberal. They're trying to shut down the debate rather than open it up.
It's right, Matthew, because I was speaking to a colleague just yesterday in Parliament who'd had this spat with, I'm not going to name this lady, but she's always on Twitter. She's got hundreds of thousands of followers. And she'd been trolling him for weeks, and he never bit once. And as soon as he went back, she played the mental health card.
I think certainly people can give it out, but they don't always take it on social media. So it is easy to suddenly say that you're being affected when you're not always as conscious of how what you're saying is impacting on other people. I mean, I would genuinely believe that, if we literally reduce the amount of time that politicians spent on Twitter, it would be a very good thing. I think in the UK it has a smaller role to play than it does in the States. I honestly think that, because of our constituency system, I honestly think that MPs who don't spend their time tweeting would find that it didn't have any impact on their results at all. So for their mental health, I think it's a good idea to, to certainly tone down the tweets, use it just as an announcement board, and certainly to mute all those replies.
I think there's that, Matt, that expectation now from the public that expect you to be on there. They want a running live commentary, if you like, of what's going on in Parliament, what's going on in the constituency. And generally they want the updates, obviously, which are nice, but I went on holiday, I think it was last year. I had a week off of social media and I felt great. And I know I've only been on Twitter just a year. I've only been on there. And somewhere I've amassed about 100,000 followers. Probably 90% of them aren't they don't say nice things about me, but that's by the by. But I actually did feel better having that little break.
Yeah, so you had a digital detox, that's what they call it, digital detox. Yeah, I've had one of those a few times. Yeah, I mean, I think it can get overwhelming, but at the end of the day, look, my view is, if you look at the institutions in this country, if you look at, say, BBC, universities, schools, Parliament, the reality in Britain today is the institutions don't give sufficient voice to many of the people who are not in those institutions. Okay. So I'm a fan of anything that magnifies the voice of people who are not in those institutions. And that could be Twitter, but it could be all these new TV channels like GB News, or it could be, YouTube shows or whatever, or new platforms or Substacks and all that stuff. And I think that new media actually is critically important because legacy media, old media, in my view, has shown itself to be too narrow, too insular, and that's why people are becoming less trusting of it.
Matthew, you see some of these profiles, these prolific trolls that will troll people like yourself and Matt and me, and then you go on the profile and have a look, and it's a fake profile. It's a silly picture, a cartoon picture. I've always said this before, that to set up a social media account, there should be some sort of verification and ID check. So you find that people, they would say something on Twitter or Facebook which they wouldn't necessarily say in real life to your face. And I know some of the left scream out, it's we need whistleblowers, we need to be able to say things without risk of harm. I think that's a lot of nonsense. I think if you're going to say nasty things or criticise people, you should man up and put your face out there. Do you think that's right?
So I think, so I'm not sure that I agree that you should legally have to, to give your name and address to be able to sign up for a social media account, but I think it's the old school approach, isn't it? MPs used to get letters, and those which had a name and address at the top of them, even if they were being critical, people would read and respond to, and those which were written in green ink anonymously, they ignored. And I think on social media, people need to do the same. So if it's a cartoon profile, block it and don't engage with it. I think that's the way to do it, rather than bringing in new rules, Lee. I'm not sure that I believe in over-regulation.
Just briefly on that, the intensity of the abuse on Twitter, do you know why that is partly? Thomas Sowell once made a good point. He said, why is it that the left are so much more hostile than the right? Why are they so much more personal? And he said, the problem is, conservatives think liberals are misguided, but liberals think conservatives are evil. So they have a very different moral vision of the world, what he called a conflict of visions. And I think that's partly what we see play out on social media, because the worst abuse and hostility I get is often from people who claim to be the most liberal, the most tolerant, the most enlightened of all. But if you violate their sacred beliefs, if you question immigration or you question globalization...
Is this, Matt, the kind of gentle politics?
No, it isn't. I mean, I'm worried about where we're going in British politics, and I know you are, because we've been talking about it. I think when you look at the big issues that are going to dominate the next 10, 20 years, and those issues are going to be about identity, they are going to be about belonging, they are going to be about immigration, they are going to be about borders. What worries me, I think, is we're not learning the lessons of the 2010s. We're not actually representing the wishes of the wider majority on those issues, and we're going to end up sliding into a kind of US-style polarisation. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to be like America. We want to be different, but that means we've got to take the British people seriously. We've got to deliver what we promised them, which is control borders, lower immigration.
Okay, guys, look, that was a great debate. Could talk about that forever, but now we've got the yes or no quiz with Matt and Matthew. Time now for the yes or no quiz with Matthew and Matt. Matthew, you struggle on this a little bit. So, hey, We're going to get 5 out of 5 this time.
Remember what your mother said?
Yes.
Be nice to me.
Matt, it's yes or no. You can.
All right.
There's no right or wrong answers. It's got to be yes or no.
Try not to get me cancelled, Lee.
Okay then. Let's go. Matthew, is Parliament representative of the population?
Yes.
No.
Number 2 for Matt. Grammar schools, yes or no?
Yes.
No.
Wow, this is good. Matthew, number 3. Should council house tenants be allowed to buy their homes?
Yes.
No.
Number 4, Matt, should we frack our own gas in the UK?
Yes.
Matthew?
No.
Final question, Matt, should we leave the ECHR?
Yes.
No.
Wow, I do not believe it. 5 out of 5. That's brilliant. I think last week we had Susan Hall on. She got 4, but she struggled on one of the questions. It's a toughie, isn't it? Yes or no?
Yeah, we're allowed to justify one, aren't we?
Yes.
So I'll go council houses to justify.
Okay.
So yes, I think people should have the right to buy their own council house. It was one of Labour's biggest mistakes in the 80s to oppose that, but only if there is a sufficient supply of new council houses, new social housing.
1 for 1.
Online. I think 1 for 1 would be fair. I mean, you can't individually match one, so you have to make sure that the numbers are broadly equal. So if it gives but you can't now take away that right. So there has to be circumstances and rules and limits. But in the principle, I'm fine with.
Let me justify the ECHR because I think we should leave. Look, I think basically we're on the cusp of a global growing crisis around migration and refugees. I think we promised British people control of their own borders, national sovereignty. We said we take their wishes seriously. Leaving any international conventions, courts, ruling that will allow us to protect British people is now going to be at the top of the agenda. We should do that. We should give them what we promised, which is control.
Do you agree with that, Matthew?
No, I mean, I made a documentary 15 years ago when the Tories first came to power about the ECHR with Andrew Neil, who started out broadly with your perspective, Matt, and we went on a literal journey, including to the court itself in Strasbourg, spoke to people, to Russian dissidents who'd used it, etc., and looked into the cases that Theresa May, when she was Home Secretary, was claiming, and came to the conclusion that just leaving the ECHR is not the golden bullet that people think it is.
So I would just briefly say it's not just leaving the ECHR. Personally, I think with an 80-seat majority, Conservatives should have reformed.
Was a Tory invention, of course, the ECHR?
Should have reformed the Human Rights Act. They should probably reform the Equalities Act. It should be part of an array of measures that we should do to enable us to control who comes in and out of the country, including, by the way, foreign national.
Thanks guys for that. This documentary, Matthew, where can I find that?
I think it's on YouTube. It's called Right's Gone Wrong Question Mark.
Okay, I will write that down because I'm struggling to sleep at night these days, and I will get that and play that probably Friday night after.
Oh, Lee, your mother's not going to be happy.
But look, do not go away because coming up after the break, we've got athletic superstar Chris Akabusi.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, I'm joined now by a bit of a superstar, Chris Akabusi, the loudest laugh anywhere. He's been laughing all morning. When you first come in, I could hear you laughing in the back door. Chris, thanks for coming on my show, my friend.
Bless you, Lee, bless you. I was once introduced as Chris Akabusi, the guy with the gariest laugh, which is very hard to ignore, but well worth the effort. Boom!
Yeah. Just, I've noticed there you've got a bit of muck on your shirt. I'll try and get that off.
He's gone there, he's gone there. Claret and blue, my friend.
Yeah. Well, listen, look, we were talking earlier, Chris, about looked after children. And not only the pressures they put on society, because it comes at a huge cost to the taxpayer, but, I'm more interested in the missed opportunities for our young people. Yeah. They get pushed from pillar to post from these children in care homes, they're in foster homes, and they're going to supported living when they get to 16. I know you're heavily involved in that at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm looking very forward to March, where I'm working with Norfolk County Council. Project Mackenzie. Mackenzie was somebody who supported me when I joined the army and got me to track and field athletics. And so Project Mackenzie is designed to work with looked after children, not in employment, education and training, and we support them in that transition to self-sufficiency. We work with the council, we work with employees, and my role is a Motivational Monday. I do Motivational Monday, I talk about mindset, I talk about peak performance, and I talk about the reality that every single day, life asks you a question. What do you want and how are you going to get there? Yeah. And with the right people on your side, you can do phenomenal things.
Okay, so let's go back in the day. I know you're knocking on a bit now, a little bit older.
Very old. I think I'm older than you, Lee.
Yeah, you are, yeah. I know you don't look it. But what got you into athletics, Chris?
So I joined the army at 16 and a half. I was leaving the children's home. 10 sheets to the wind.
What? Just go back to that. You left the children's home at 16 to go in the army.
Yeah. I mean, my mum and dad came from Nigeria. They were students. They went back to their country of origin, left me here because I had a British passport. And there was a war in Nigeria. Boom. Akabusi and my junior brother were in a children's home. I don't like the poor me angle. I mean, it obviously wasn't all bed of roses. But the upshot was at 16, I had to leave the children's home. And I was petrified. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And one of the uncles, we called them, in the children's home, said, join the army. Join the army. On the True Square, met a guy called Simon Mackenzie. He was a drill sergeant, troop sergeant. He was also the army athletics officer. And he spotted my talent, got me my very first set of athletics bikes, entered me into races, and started training me. At the end of the year, I was the Army Junior Champion, and I found a purpose. I'd found a reason for living. And I found a community. A lot of kids in the children's home, you're looking for a family. And the Army was my family, athletics was my family, and I felt that I could contribute to my society and be an asset, not a liability. While all the time as a kid in the children's home, I was always saying, Akabusi, we know you're there, we can hear your laugh. Go to Mr. Sharp, get the cane. Everyone was laughing at me, and I thought it was laughing with me, laughing at me, because I left school with 9 no levels. I needed a focus, and Simon Mackenzie came in.
Did you ever feel, at that time, Chris, in the children's home, did you ever feel like a victim?
No, I mean, look, like all of us, right? We wake up one day in this world, and we wake up in an environment. And my world was a children's home. And you just get on with it. You just get on with it. So I wasn't a victim. No, I wouldn't say I was a victim. But I learnt. So I learnt antisocial behaviour. I didn't know it was antisocial behaviour. Knock down ginger, nicking milk bottles off the doorsteps. I didn't know it was antisocial behaviour. It was just what we did. Yeah. But I knew that I couldn't go on that way. And I knew that, because I was supposed to go to bed, sit land. I was going to work for a manufacturing company. I knew I was going to be in trouble if I let that. And I don't know what happened, but I had the wherewithal to join the army. I wasn't a victim, it's my circumstances. We're all thrown into the world in a set of circumstances, and life asks you, what are you going to do about it?
Well, you're a role model, you're an inspiration, you didn't have the best start as a teenager. But what about some of the kids you was in the home with? What sort of path have they taken, Chris?
Yeah, that is a shame, really. No names, no pat drills.
No.
Well, a couple of them are dead. One was in gangs. He died. One was GBH driving taken away. He ended up dying. A couple of boat people. A couple of the girls in the sex industry.
So is the care system working then for these young people? Is it getting better?
I'm sure it's getting better because we have all sorts of different pathways now. I had good social workers. I've got to say I had a good social workers, but then they have... right now, they have people who are involved in your career development. You don't have to leave home at 16, you can now leave home at 21. So there are systems in place. I think life has learned, people have learned that looked after children are vulnerable, but still, far too many kids from a looked after background are overrepresented in the Jewish prison system, overrepresented sleeping on the bridges, overrepresented in gangs, overrepresented in drugs. So ultimately, we do fail that section of community.
Yeah. In the army, how long did you serve for?
I served 15 years in the army. Wow. I had a phenomenal 15 years. I first started as a Royal Signaller, a data telegraphist. Couldn't spell it, but I knew I was going to be inside a comm centre, nice, warm.
Did you get picked on because of that laugh in the army?
No, in fact, the laugh, I tell you what, the laugh was as a saviour because I know it can be annoying, but
yeah,
also...
but when you're in the trenches, we can't have Chris Akabusi laughing like that, can we?
Yeah, I'm a runner.
Yeah. Laugh all you want. I laugh, yeah.
Yeah, no, what I found, you see, I laugh when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm glad, when I'm bad. And I found pretty early on that actually laughing makes people feel happy and oh, he's all right.
Yeah.
And in any way you like that, oh, he's all right, oh, he's one of us, oh, he's safe. And so it's been a defence mechanism. Yeah. Now, look, like anything in life...
Has it got you in trouble?
Oh, gosh, yeah, I've got the cane. I won't be doing anything. I'll just be there, hanging around like the lurgy. And Akabusi, we know you're there. Akabusi gets a cane, everybody else gets away with it. So now it's got me in trouble. But most of the time, it's got me like, come on, mate, you're all right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, most of the time,
so I guess there may be, I don't know, somebody, maybe family members or friends have got no children that's in a care facility in these places. What sort of advice? I know you do speaking, don't you?
Yes.
These kids. What sort of advice would you give to these kids that's looking in?
So, your life is your life. The past is for reference, not for residence. The world wants to help you. I tell you what, honestly, young person, young man, young lady, there are so many people out there who want to support you in your life, but no one can do it for you.
Yeah.
You step into your arena on your own. You can't do it alone. We are here, but we need you to extend your hand. If you do that, I'll do that, and there is so much support for you out there. Yeah. But you've got to extend it. Now, we understand trauma. Yeah. We understand trauma. You're disassociated with society. You're disassociated often from yourself. We understand that. So we're gentle. We'll take our time. But you've got to do that. If you don't do that, I can't do that. Yeah.
I think you make a good point there, because I'm a big believer, and I always say this to young people when I speak to them, that everybody is good at something.
Correct.
It's up to society and the individual to find out what you're good at and then try and excel at it. Is that what you think?
And trial and error is a great way of doing it. You've got an idea, have a go, fail, fall up, get back up again, have a go. Somewhere along the line, you will find your own basket of skills.
Yeah.
And we've all got something to contribute. We've all got a tribe, we've all got a community, we've all got a skill set. You just need to try to connect with those people, and they're waiting for you. And you'll get that ring of truth. You will find it.
So you know when you was winning your medals?
Yeah.
When you're running around that track like a whippet, did you ever think about the children's home and when you were fully focused? Or at the end of the race, do you think, wow, look where I've come from?
No. I mean, as you get older, you look back, and I talk about Keezy. So I'm known as Chris, but Keezy was what I was born. And I think about Keezy, and you think, okay, mate, you did all right. But no, when you're on the way up, you're in a different tribe. You know, today I just had a picture from Roger Black, name drop, bang.
Oh, yeah.
But, and it's a picture of us training. And you think of the community. Then I was with, name drop, Dave Thompson, Edwin Moses, Roger Black. And you're thinking at a completely different level. You're thinking that, you know, I remember there's a guy called Marcus Adams, he's in our group, and we were absolutely hammering Marcus. Why? Because he was the Commonwealth Games champion, but number 3 in England. You know, and when you're training with world champions, you think on a different level. So, you know, back to those young kids, you need to get yourself to people, think at a different level, or put at a different level. So, no, you don't think about those days. They're gone. The past is a reference of resonance. They're gone. They're at the foundation. Because, tell you what, Lee, when you come from that background, mate, you're hungry.
Yeah.
You are hungry.
You want it.
I'll do double sessions. I'm hungry. And, you know, when you get to that line, it's do or die. There is no try. There's no second chances. This is it. If you are hungry, you grab it. But if you're a little bit, there's another, then you fall apart.
Well, you're making me feel hungry now, Chris. That's brilliant. Thanks for coming on, mate. Shame about the badge. Do not go away, because coming up next, we've got Right versus Left with the Housewives' favourite, Matthew Larzer.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
GB. Joining me now for Right versus Left, we've got Matthew Larser. He's our resident left in the corner, but he's more to the right, I think, these days, Matt.
No, I'm a moderate in the Labour Party. That's what we call ourselves.
Moderates. And we've got Professor Matt Goodwin, first time on the show. I mean, I look back, Matt, to when I was in the Labour Party many, many years ago. I think this problem we've got with migration really started back when the Labour Party came to power. They sort of opened the doors, they made it, you know, I don't know why Blair did it, but it's not been a success, has it?
It's been a complete failure. It started in 2004 under New Labour. They opened the door to mass migration. It was then continued under David Cameron and later Boris Johnson, who further liberalised the whole system. New Labour set the whole thing in motion, took net migration to over 200,000. Tony Blair, I would argue, was as much an architect of the Brexit vote as David Cameron, because many of those concerns over migration and the pace of change in the country obviously found their expression in the vote for Brexit. But Boris put it on steroids. I mean, Boris was the guy who then came in and instead of giving people control and what he promised, which was lower overall numbers, he liberalised the whole system. So migration from outside of Europe then rocketed to to over 700,000 in 2022, and removed the requirement for British companies to advertise jobs in Britain first. So Boris was not a Conservative, in my view, was a Liberal, but he took this experiment of
British jobs for British workers under Labour.
So, Matthew, is Tony Blair to blame for Brexit?
Well, no, I think certainly the loosening, the failure in 2004 when the large number of Central and Eastern European countries joined the EU, the failure to put in the sort of the temporary sort of break on it, which other European countries did, certainly was a mistake. I think Labour didn't listen to concerns. I think one of the biggest mistakes was when ministers, including Jack Straw, went on telly and said, who's going to come? A couple of thousand maybe, and then several 100,000 people came each year. Yeah. But I think that Brexit is actually responsible for the mess we're in now, because the whole point about within the EU migration was that a lot of people went home. They came here for a couple of years and they went back to Europe, and that was the scheme essentially worked perfectly in that it was designed to fill labour shortages, freedom of movement. Mrs Thatcher was a big supporter of that. Was designed to allow labour shortages to be filled and to have a natural flow of people. And instead, we leave the EU. As you say, Matt, we were promised that we were going to take back control of our borders, and instead we have legal migration at record highs. Crucially, from outside the EU, with large numbers of people bringing dependents.
Matthew,
didn't do that.
That's the key point, because the migration we have now is a net cost to the economy. There was a really good study that just came out at the University of Amsterdam, and it said if you are relying now more on low-wage, low-skill immigration from outside of Europe, it actually doesn't contribute that much to the economy. It takes more out than it puts in.
I guess you're talking about healthcare,
and the problem,
problem,
the problem isn't Brexit, actually. That's where I disagree with Matthew. The problem is how Brexit was interpreted by Conservative MPs and the government, because Brexit allowed us to introduce a lower migration, high-skill policy. That's what was promised. The Conservatives misinterpreted that to give us a low-skill mass migration policy. So Brexit wasn't the problem. It was how that was interpreted and how our politicians used those powers to deliver the opposite of what they promised the British people.
Matthew, is it going to get better under a Labour government?
Well, I think certainly a Labour government will be tackling the problem. It's not going to make fake promises the Tories have done. We had tens of thousands of net migrants promised under Theresa May, then a couple of 100,000, and now we're at the 700,000.
Will it get better under Labour, though?
Yes, I think we'll have a sensible proposal. For example, Labour opposed Rishi Sunak's lowering of the threshold. So not only was the Tory government not advertising British jobs to British workers first, it was actually allowing people to come in under the rate for the job the British workers demanded.
What about illegal migration?
And illegal migration is a priority for Labour to smash the gangs.
Yeah, but no one who's worked on that issue, including the National Crime Agency, thinks that would work. They have said openly the only thing that would deter illegal migrants is having the credible threat of deportation.
I have to say, I think we need to tackle the problem at source. I think we need to look at...
You say that, Matthew.
We need the offshore processing the EU's
You say that, Matthew, but when I went to Cali last year, I went to the camps. I've said it many times on the show. I went to the migrant camps in Cali, and we spoke to the young men from Eritrea and Sudan, and they was quite honest with us. They said if they thought for 1 minute they was going to be flown to a third country, i.e. Rwanda, they would not come, they would claim asylum in France. Well, that's from their mouth.
I think what you need to do is look at the record, Lee. So Labour, the last year of the Labour government, 17,000 asylum applications, which had been a massive...
But that wasn't the question, Matthew.
Now there are 80,000 plus. Why? Because Labour closed those camps in Calais, because it worked with the French properly. It closed the Sangak camp.
You say they closed the camps in Calais, Matthew. I remember Ashfield Labour Party going down with busloads of food and supplies, and they were encouraging people to come.
Well, what worries me about where we are, putting just partisan politics to one side, I think under a Labour government, illegal migration is going to go even higher. I think legal migration is going to go even higher because Labour don't really see it as an issue. And I think the end result is going to be either millions of people giving up on politics or turning to something new and saying, you know, we are fed up of the old parties, they're not listening, they're not giving us what they promised they would give us, which is lower overall migration. One stat from a report this week, they asked Brits to estimate what they think net migration is. The average estimate was 70,000. Net migration is 700,000. So most people out there haven't even yet realised what's happened to the country.
So look, I think you're right that if people are promised one thing and another is delivered, and that with the cynicism, and that cynicism is putting it politely in politics, will get to fever pitch. I just totally disagree with you that Labour doesn't think this is...
When does it stop?
I think Labour learned the lessons from the
When does it
noughties.
stop? Does it stop when the population gets to 90 million, 100 million, 110 million?
No, I mean, I think we need to reduce net migration now, and one of the key things we need to do is invest in skills here and welfare to work, which is a huge priority for the Labour government, so that we can get people into those jobs, and we're not taking people into the health and social care sector from all over the world.
I agree with that, but I would also push further and say I think we need a 5-year moratorium on migration so we can absorb what's happened to the country over the last 20 years and we can get back to incentivising business to invest in British people. There's no incentive for business to invest in British people if you can get low-skilled, low-wage workers from abroad.
I don't believe in a moratorium,
but I do... designed to prop up big business.
But I do agree. I don't believe in a moratorium, but I do agree with you, which is why Labour was firmly opposed to Rishi Sunak's personal policy of undercutting British workers by reducing the minimum salary. That has now been reversed because of pressure, frankly, from the Labour Party and from people within the Tory, some people in the Tory party like you, Lee.
We keep using this argument. There's not enough people that, in the care industry and in NHS. When does it stop? When, is it 90 million, 100 million?
No, I think we need to instantly, a Labour government needs to put a massive focus on skills. I think one of the other issues, that one of the mistakes the Labour government in the noughties made was putting an initial emphasis on university, on increasing the number of people going to university was a good thing, but then it forgot about the other 50% of people who aren't going to university, and there needs to be an absolute revolution in skills, which needs to be at the heart of what...
Well, if I work in universities, and I can tell you, mass immigration is being used to prop up second-rate universities that should otherwise go bust. And the graduate visa route, which Boris Johnson introduced and Dominic Cummings introduced, has been a disaster for this country because it stopped universities from reforming and investing in British kids.
I agree. You cannot have a university sector which is entirely dependent on foreign students subsidising UK students, and therefore, the choice of foreign students. We saw York University, which is a very good university this week, lowering its entry requirements for foreign students because the market's getting too competitive.
But I've come from Westminster today, guys, and I've walked past construction workers both on the estate in Parliament and on the road down here, and I would say 90%, because I heard them talking, were not... English wasn't their first language. These are people who's probably come from Eastern Europe, and they're doing all the heavy jobs, the manual jobs, the road digging, the road laying, all that sort of stuff. Back in the day, that was all the British guys that did.
In a sense, the Eastern European building workers, yes, we need to give more people construction skills, more British workers construction skills, but those lads will be going home after a couple of years. They're not good, and that's what. I mean, look, the campaign to keep us in, was so mealy-mouthed. It wouldn't actually say that if you vote to leave, you're going to end up with higher migration.
But the answer is not to go back into the European Union.
No, and I'm not saying
it's not to say because if you look at the EU now, look, you've got borders being reimposed. The Schengen area is dead. You've got Germany going into recession. You've got populist parties all over the place blowing up because everybody over there is as worried as we are about the refugee
crisis. Guys, that is absolutely brilliant. Thanks for the debate.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, that sounds like last orders at the bar, and I'm joined by the very lovely Frankie Essex, sister of Joey Essex,
Yes.
Towie fame, reality TV. How did that happen?
Well, I don't really know, to be fair. Obviously, the show was getting casted. They chose Joey. And then Joe was like, please come on. I was like, no, I've just got a really good job in London, Joe. Like, can't do it. And then 7 months later, quit that on the show. And that's where it all began.
Enjoy it?
I loved it. It was an experience.
How does something like that, Frankie, change your life overall?
It made me very confident. I was very shy, didn't really like going out in crowds and stuff. Used to keep my own to myself, basically. And when you have to speak to strangers a lot, when they're calling out your name from across the street, you have to...
Did it bring a lot of happiness into your life?
Yeah, it definitely brought a lot of happiness. Also a lot of anxiety and stress.
Okay.
But I am who I am today through that and through...
Because you had a little bit of sadness in your life before, didn't you, when you was a teenager?
Yes, I did. I lost my mum to suicide when I was 13. But a shrink actually said to me, if you're allowed to call him that, that the impact of losing my mum was such a big impact that being like a celebrity would never change me because I've already had that big, massive impact. And she said, actually, when you have children, that'll be the next big impact. So, yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, we've spoken about suicide a few times on this show.
Yeah.
And I think everybody in this country now knows somebody or is related to somebody who's been affected by suicide. And I'm doing a project at work in Parliament and locally in Ashfield on male suicide because one of my good friends, Graham, his son, Sean, he took his life last Christmas, not the one just gone, the one before, 30 years old,
So young.
Everything to live for, no money worries,
No.
good lad, everybody loved him. And he just went home one night and did it, and we don't know why. Why don't men talk to each other?
I don't know. Like, why do people do it? There's always them ifs and buts. Like, my mum was 37. 800 people was at my mum's funeral, estimated.
Wow.
Like, it was a shock to everyone. She had me and my brother, 2 children. She was married, we only lived in Chigwell for 3 years.
Wow.
Just got a dream home. And I don't know why people, I'd love to know, I'd love to ask her them questions, but on another respect, it's like I wouldn't be the woman who I am today if it wasn't for what happened to her.
Are you looking for answers?
I was when I was younger. Wow. I think now I'm older, I get it. I get how hard life is. I get the struggles through life and stress, you know, like we've all been through something. Everyone's got their own story. Life's not easy, it's hard. But I think talking about it and speaking up and having a voice helps others. And I've always spoke about my mum, I'm always there for other people, you know?
Yeah, I think it is important to try and talk to people, but social media plays a big part. I've spoke to parents of children before that are convinced that social media, the dark web, has played a part in the suicide of their children.
Yeah, for a lot of young children now, I think, as well, like the trolling. I'm very lucky. I've never really had that much trolling. But I know people who have. People get it every day.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're behind a keyboard. Loads of people saying good things about you, and that one person says that one thing, it can ruin your whole day and sticks in your head, doesn't it? Like, I've had it before, but not that bad.
So I guess a lot of this starts in the schools as well, the social media stuff, the bullying, the trolling, the hounding. And you've got 2 young children. What sort of parental controls are you going to have over them when they start wanting to go on Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and Insta, whatever it is?
God, do you know what? I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah.
It's a big world out there, isn't it?
It is a big world out there, and you just want to protect them as much as you can. And I suppose I'll get to that. They're
But you see little kids now everywhere you go, little kids, 3, 4, 5-year-old, they've got their phones out and they've got little iPads and you don't know what they're looking at, you know, and these companies now, these TikToks, and they can sort of tap into what you're thinking almost, can't they? And just keep filling you full of this nonsense.
Yeah, I think with my children, I do give them a lot of attention. I think some people are on their phones too much. Like, I see women walking down the street pushing the pram on the phone. You know,
or a family in a pub like this having a meal.
And then they look up, bang into someone. It's like there's a road there.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm never really on my phone when I've got my back. I can't. I've got 2 of them.
Yeah.
If one of them snatches the phone, they both want it. It's just no point. Might as well put the phone away. They're my world. They come first. And that's why I haven't really been out and about. I've been building a house, getting everything prepared for them, for when, if anything happens to me, they've got everything. That's what I thrive for now, is them, more than anything. I haven't got a mum. If she could be here now, she'd love them, you know?
5 years' time, kids are at school.
Yeah.
You've got to start and have a bit of a life for yourself again, because they're going to be out all day. Where do you see yourself, Frankie, in 5? What will you be doing?
Well, my plan is our plan is, mine and my other half, is to have another baby when they're around 5, when they're back at school. But then I'm thinking I will be 40 then. How will I feel? I'll be 5 years older, 40. I might be a bit more tired.
Yeah.
Where I've been building my house and stuff, I really, really want to do interior design.
Okay.
So I booked a course.
This Towie thing, I've never watched it, and I do apologise, I've never watched it. It's for young people, I assume.
All different ages.
What is there an age limit on it?
No, there's not. No, my cousin was 40 when she left
40.
the show. Yeah.
Is that about the oldest?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so there's no scope for me to go on there.
You never know.
Okay.
Could be a
we could have a
debut.
Towie for older people. Would that be more fun, do you think?
Oh, definitely.
Get some old wrinklies in.
Oh, yeah.
Talking of old wrinklies, we've got Adam Brooks. He's lurking around the side of the bike. Going to come in, Adam, please. Famous landlord. He talked about mental health earlier. Adam does a lot of boxing as well, don't you? I think that's good for your mental health. Isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And again, getting these kids off of their iPads and their phones a lot, teaching them some self-defence, discipline.
Now, talking about Twitter and the trolls, we've mentioned it many times on this show today, Adam. You get a little bit of stick from the idiots on there that accuse you of being 5'4". Now, there's nothing wrong, by the way, disclaimer, at being 5'4". My mother's about 5'4". It's a lovely height.
Yeah.
But I can confirm that I'm probably about 6'1.5", 2, with my heels on. Adam.
I'm 5'10".
I'm 5'7", So Adam is definitely not 5'4".
No, there you go. There you go, Twitter
And I've
trolls.
got platform
Right,
shoes on.
on the poll, we've got Adam, you should be good at this.
I'm going first.
And Frank, well, both go together. Let's have a bit of a race.
Well, no, go on.
Go on then.
Frankie, do that and I'll do it after. Go on.
Let's have a look, darling.
Right.
It's there.
Just to prove that it's
it's
empty.
not cheating. And just, yeah, pull it back. That's it. Keep going.
I've done it wrong.
Come on.
I've done it wrong.
No,
oh
yeah,
my
just
God,
keep
this
going
is
down.
so
Just
bad.
keep going.
Oh no.
Go on, keep going.
Keep
Keep
oh,
going.
it's so
Come
bad.
on,
I can't.
you've got to go all the way.
Oh God,
Come on,
it's so embarrassing.
they're looking for
I
stuff.
might take that one.
No, you can't, darling. You can't do that.
Oh, it's so bad.
And then just
oh my
plonk it
God.
on the ball.
The pressure got
look
to
at
you,
that.
Frank.
Adam, potential bar staff here?
It's so bad.
I've known Frankie many years,
That's
but
so
no,
bad.
she's not going to
Right,
get a
now
job on
watch-
that.
watch-
I know
watch
I
this.
did that
Right,
one.
this could be embarrassing because I haven't
no,
really been hands-on
there's no
for
pressure.
a little while.
There's no pressure here.
It's so bad.
That's professional, look. No pressure. I'm telling you what, mate, there's not much of a head on that.
There's not much of a head on
You
that.
can put that there. That's
You know what?
for the
It's
landlord.
not the best.
That's not even the best
I
either.
think Twitter's going to explode.
Yeah,
tomorrow
yeah,
now,
there's
but
It's
no-
better than mine,
I'm
but
not going to be happy
we
with
need to
that.
get a judge
I've
in.
got the froth and you're
We need to get a judge in. We've got Nicola, one of our new junior producers on GB News. Right, you've got 2 points there. You've got Frankie's there,
Okay.
and you've got Adam's there. Out of 10, darling.
I'm going to give it a 3.
Oh, dear, 3. And Adam's here. It's not the perfect
That's
pint.
not the perfect
But
pint
it's
at all. I've
much
let
better.
myself down a little bit there.
You'd have to top that up in a normal pub, wouldn't you?
Yeah, listen.
Okay, taking into account that he is the landlord, I'm going to give that a 7.
A 7, a poultry 7.
quite good.
So that'll be poultry 7, Adam, for you.
Yeah, listen, I've got to go on a course, it looks like, doesn't it?
But thanks once again, mate, for coming on.
Thanks a
for
lot.
being supportive.
Take care.
And Frankie, good luck with
Thank
what
you
you're
so
doing.
much.
Nicola, thank you, darling. Thanks for watching another edition of Lee Anderson's Real World. We're going to be back again next week, and I can confirm once again that Adam Brooks is 5'10". But now let's go to Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. A marked change in our weather occurs this weekend. After a cold week, it turns much milder. It also turns much wetter and windier as Storm Isha arrives late in the weekend. Here's what's going on. The Atlantic influence is returning, and it's really going to bring us some very wet and windy weather. Storm Isha turning up later Sunday and into the start of Monday. But for the time being, actually, for much of the UK, it's a quiet end to the week. We keep the cold air in the south and the east, a touch of frost overnight under clear skies, but elsewhere increasingly cloudy, spells of rain moving into Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England. Still some mountain snow for Scotland, but that snow level is rising. So at lower levels it's going to be rain and some icy patches about for northern Scotland first thing this weekend. But soon enough, the milder air is sweeping in from the southwest, and we're going to see increasingly cloudy and damp weather across much of the UK throughout Saturday. Saturday afternoon, the rain does ease for a time, stays damp over western and northern hills, but brightest towards the southeast. Still on the chilly side, 6 to 7 Celsius, but you can see further west, 9 Celsius. Turning milder into the start of Sunday, generally frost-free, bright, but with some showers around. Then the first signs of Storm Isha, a spell of very heavy rain moving in, especially over western hills, before the winds really pick up by Sunday evening. The risk of 70 or 80 mile per hour wind gusts in places.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK. Here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
It's 8 o'clock from the world headquarters of GB News.